This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. Well, here down under, we have just celebrated Australia Day, and we have celebrated with so much pride. We are the best country in the world, and most Aussies will tell you how lucky we are to call Australia home. What do I love about it? It's the most stunning country, unbelievably beautiful. There's opportunity here to work hard and see that hard work pay off. Of course, our leaders need to do a much better job making sure that we can keep the Australian dream alive. So you can own a home, start a family, raise children, but of course that's a conversation for another day. You only have to look around the world to see how lucky we are. Australia, it's always been such a safe country, but we know too well how quickly that can change. In fact, it did change on December 14 at Bondi Beach when two alleged radical Islamist terrorists opened fire, killing 15 innocent Australians, including 10-year-old Matilda, her parents giving her the most Australian name that they could. This photograph in The Australian is of Matilda's last Australia Day. We know now more than ever we cannot take our safety, our freedom and our way of life for granted. It is precious. And in the aftermath of that terror attack, we saw the Australian spirit shine through. Locals, volunteers, first responders, lifeguards, neighbours, all rallying together to show up and help and to send a message that our Australian spirit will not be broken by those who hate us. So Australia Day, it's such an important day to give thanks to those who have defended our country and those who continue to make it what it is. We welcome our new citizens, we honour our First Nations history, we recognise Australians who have contributed so much in all areas, and of course we celebrate the country that we love and that we share. I think we all know that nothing beats our beaches, our barbecues, our mateship and our Aussie sense of humour. Nothing beats our home, Australia. So let's just take a look at some of the Aussies out celebrating.
Are we making the news? Yeah. Yes, that's the way. Aussie, Aussie.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Have a great Australia Day.
How many flags have you handed out today?
200. 200,000 million trillion.
Happy Australia Day.
Thank you.
Happy Australia Day. Thank you. Happy Australia Day.
We love to see it. Coming up, we'll be unpacking the rise in support for Australia Day and also the rise in support for One Nation, the likely leadership spill within the Liberal Party, and we'll cross to the United States as the situation in Minnesota goes from bad to worse after a second person has been fatally shot in protests involving ICE officers. And in the Middle East, there are reports that Iran could have killed as many as 30,000 protesters in the space of 2 days. Several US warships have arrived in the Middle East as it looks increasingly likely that the US will strike Iran. Later in the show, we'll cover all the latest royals and entertainment news. Look, every country has its healthcare problems, but America's Medicare system is on another level. Millions of seniors end up on the wrong plan every year. They either overpay, lose access to their doctors, or both, not because they did anything wrong, but because the system is designed to confuse them. And it gets worse. A lot of Medicare advisors are really just salespeople pushing whichever plan pays them the biggest commission. That's why I want to tell all of my American Power Hour viewers about Chapter. Chapter doesn't work for big insurance or the government. They're independent. In fact, they are the only advisor that compares every Medicare plan nationwide to find one that actually fits your needs. On average, that saves people about $1,100 a year. Just have a read of the testimonials. One woman, Jill, said Chapter showed her better options that didn't even appear on the Medicare.gov website. That's how broken the system is and how valuable it is to have someone truly on your side. So if you're looking for Medicare guidance, don't go it alone. Call the number below to speak with Chapter and get clear, unbiased guidance on your Medicare options. Let's cross to the US now. Joining us is broadcaster and commentator Jeff Cruer. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. Let's start with the nightmare unfolding in Minneapolis involving anti-ICE protesters and ICE officers. Of course, over the weekend, a second person has been killed during the protest, 37-year-old Alex Pretty. He was armed with a gun at some point. He was fatally shot by a Border Patrol agent. And of course, this comes just weeks after the fatal shooting of Renee Good in the same city. And it's absolutely tragic that two people have now died. The scenes that we are seeing coming out of Minneapolis, they are chaotic, they are ugly. And the Trump administration is now investigating the shooting over the weekend, which they should. Border Czar Tom Homan is on his way to Minneapolis. And in the last 24 hours, it appears that there has been a shift in the Trump administration's response to the shooting. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social, Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. Jeff, you know, deportations being carried out across the United States are being carried out in red states, and we're not seeing the same chaos. Yet in blue areas, there is this chaos. And I want to know why we are seeing more ICE-related violence in Minnesota.
Well, I live in a state, Louisiana, that's a red state that voted for President Trump. ICE came down here a few weeks ago, apprehended a lot of dangerous criminals. There were no incidents. They were treated respectfully. Local law enforcement worked with them, and they left. And they moved on to Minnesota. And you're seeing these situations, especially in blue cities, Chicago, Portland, New York. Minneapolis is the worst. And it brings back bad memories of 2020 in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, where you had, portions of the city burned down. And it's because there's no cooperation, really. I'm glad the president talked to the governor. ICE is trying to do the best they can do, trying to remove dangerous criminals, yet protesters are impeding what they're doing. Tragically, now 2 people have been killed. There was no police to set up a perimeter, no police to keep these protesters back. They're right in the face of these ICE agents as they're trying to do their job. And who knows where this investigation is going to go? It needs to be obviously conducted. It's a sad, sad situation, but it would be so much better if they'd be working together. Maybe now we're going to see some cooperation.
Hopefully. We need to see that cooperation, and we need to see a de-escalation in violence. Here is Caroline Levitt speaking earlier today.
Has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media and picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday.
Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on the media's role and its coverage over the past few days, past few weeks. But first of all, can we look at Tim Walz? He is apparently now going to be working with the Trump administration, but these are his comments over the weekend. He appears to make this comparison between enforcing laws to Nazi Germany.
Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
No, that's not what is happening at all.
No, and the Anti-Defamation League sent out a statement that they categorically reject what Tim Walz was trying to do. They criticized it, that they thought it was reprehensible to try to make a connection there. They do that all the time on the left. They bring up Nazism, they bring up Hitler, they talk about the ICE agents as stormtroopers. It's reprehensible. What I see is a president winning a mandate. Part of his election platform was he was going to remove illegal aliens from the country. ICE is trying to implement the policy that the American people voted for. And these politicians and these protesters are trying to implement their agenda, which lost at the ballot box. So if they wanted all these illegal aliens to stay in the country, they needed to elect Kamala Harris, and she lost. So the president is having obviously a difficult time in these blue states. One of the options was, of course, the Insurrection Act to bring in the U.S. Army to try to really restore order there. The president has hesitated because of the optics, and I think what that would do, inflame the situation. So Tim Walz has made some disgusting comments. He really has, as has the mayor of Minneapolis. He has been reprehensible as well. The media, of course, is giving the side of the leftists. They're not talking about the people that are victimized by illegal immigrants. They're not talking about the work that ICE is doing that is very difficult with all of these protesters. So it's a very biased coverage from the media, which we expect here in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah, it continues. Barack Obama has condemned Donald Trump for the death of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. He posted on X, "It should be a wake-up call to every American, regardless of party, that many of our core values as a nation are increasingly under assault." This is the same person who earned the title Deporter-in-Chief, and this is what Obama had to say about deportations back in 2013.
I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed. And Congress right now has not changed what I consider to be a broken immigration system. And what that means is that we have certain obligations to enforce the laws that are in place, even if we think that in many cases the results may be tragic. There are going to be some stories that break our hearts. And more importantly, we're going to continue to have an economy that is stifled by a really inefficient system where not only are we deporting folks, but we also have a legal immigration system that is so bottlenecked that it forces sometimes people into the illegal system.
That was Obama, the deporter-in-chief, and people forget that he was responsible for deporting millions from the country. And of course, what will make America safer is if illegals are deported.
Well, Bill Clinton back in the 90s talked about the need for strict immigration enforcement. He talked about having to deport people that were here illegally. Barack Obama did, as you pointed out there, numerous times, that it was important to deport people that were here illegally. He talked about the economic interests of the country being served by doing that. And as he just said, legal immigration is a bottleneck, and illegal immigration is a way for people to leapfrog over the people that are doing it the right way and get benefits and being rewarded for breaking our laws. So he even had some deportations under Joe Biden. So this has been going on for decades. But because it's Donald Trump, the left goes crazy, the media goes crazy, the people are not allowing him to implement what he was elected to do, and that just enrages them. I mean, the attitude of some of these protesters is pretty serious and dangerous. These people are filled with rage that I really have not seen in this country in a long time. And I think it's just Donald Trump triggers them. It's Trump derangement syndrome.
And many of them have been encouraged by Democrats. You've heard many Democrats saying that ICE should be abolished, and many people getting very swept up in the chaos, taking to the streets, and in some cases trying to interfere with law enforcement. Now, let's look at the Trump administration's response. It seems now there has been this shift over the fatal in response to the fatal shooting of the weekend. Initially, I don't think they did a very good job. I mean, instantly defending the fatal shooting, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying that this protester was committing an act of domestic terrorism. And here's Attorney General Pam Bondi on the news trying to talk tough about this legal letter she sent to Tim Walz. Look at this.
Rape, homicide, manslaughter. That's who they're trying to protect in Minnesota. I do not understand these people. We sent Governor Walz a very strong letter today. We had been working on this letter. We got it out saying that he better support President Trump. He better support the men and women in law enforcement, because if he doesn't, we are. And that's what we're doing right now.
Were there any consequences in this letter?
Well, we'll see. This is fluid. Let's see how Governor Walz responds. Let's see what he does based on this, based on what's happening right now.
We'll see. It's not exactly a message of confidence.
No consequences. I mean, she does a lot of strongly worded letters But as far as consequences, I mean, there's been criminal behavior going on in Minnesota for weeks now. We haven't seen many consequences. A guy that I interviewed on my program numerous times was almost killed. I don't think there's any consequences for that. A lot of the conservative social media influencers have been there, been attacked, no consequences. So that's the problem with Pam Bondi. A lot of people think that she talks tough on Fox News, but doesn't deliver. Now, Tom Homan, I think, is a guy who delivers and a guy who can maybe try to solve this situation that is so broken. And if the governor is talking to the president, that is a good thing. That's a step in the right direction. The mayor obviously is part of the problem as well. He has been absolutely irresponsible in his comments. So there's a lot of blame to go around. But your point about how the initial handling was not good, I think, is on target. They jumped in with some comments that they should have held back on and said, hey, we need to complete our investigation.
Yeah.
We need to see what happened here, because there's a lot of video angles, as you know. There's always different conflicting versions from witnesses. So it's still in the early stages of the investigation.
Yeah, we are. Look, just back on the media. The media of the weekend was exposed for lying about ICE. Media outlets were quick to kind of parrot Democrats who shared image of a 5-year-old boy named Liam Ramos and claimed that he was detained by ICE while coming home from preschool. But according to the White House, officers were actually staying with this child who was abandoned by his father, who was an illegal from Ecuador. ABC News published the headline, 5-year-old asylum seeker detained as ICE expands enforcement in Minnesota. Axios said ICE's detention of child puts new focus on Trump team's tactics. And of course, Homeland Security wrote on X that ICE did not target a child. The child was abandoned. I mean, how damaging is this when you've got the media kind of spinning these stories?
Well, it's like the media is invested in chaos. I mean, it's like the media wants to see what's going on in the streets of Minneapolis expand across the country. That's what it seems to me, that they run with a story that is inaccurate. They do it time and time again to paint the administration in the worst possible light. So much of what they say is just filled with lies. We're constantly trying to correct the media. And my heart goes out to Caroline Leavitt having to deal with these people in the press in her press briefings, because so many of them are just so biased. So it's a continual problem that we face here in this country with the coverage of this administration. I think the administration is trying the best they can in a very difficult situation. We did have some good news over the first year. About 2.5 million people that were here illegally left. But a lot of those people just self-deported on their own. And that's probably the easiest way to deal with this.
Yeah.
Encourage people, incentivize them to leave on their own.
Finally, I want to get to the fraud scandal in the US. I mean, just how widespread it is coming to light. The president posted over the weekend that it is actually possible that the total amount of money stolen over the years by corrupt politicians and fraudsters from Minnesota will exceed $100 billion. In any event, whether it is or isn't, the theft, incompetence and fraud is massive. Sadly, whatever numbers we find, California and other Democrat-run states will be worse. Stay tuned. $100 billion. Jeff, do you think we're ever going to really know the true extent of the fraud and how widespread it is in other states?
No, I mean, I think we can make estimates. I think we can try to deal with it as best we can. But this has been going on for decades. It's been going on, I think, all over the country. You know, when Doge came in, when President Trump started, they tried to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, and there was such an outcry. People don't want this solved. And now the administration is seeing it in the states, and hopefully we're going to get a person or a team dedicated in the White House to going after this fraud. Minnesota is horrible, but I think the worst state is California. I think it's going to make what has been going on in Minnesota look like peanuts, because California is such a bigger state and you've had corrupt officials there for a long time. So this is a real problem. It's one that I think the American people are very outraged about, because, you know, we're $38.5 trillion in debt. We'd be in a much better situation if we didn't have all this fraud going on.
Absolutely. Broadcaster and commentator Jeff Cruer, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
If you watch my reporting, you know I cover protests, political theatre and media meltdowns. And what always strikes me is how disconnected the slogans are from real life. While activists shout ideology, ordinary people face rising prices, higher taxes, and governments determined to make everything harder. We're told to trust the experts, trust media narratives, trust the massive spending and endless debt will make us better off. But history and common sense say otherwise. When leadership is weak and policy reckless, everyday people pay the price. That's why I believe in owning something real, physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold, tangible assets that hold value through inflation and instability. With thousands of five-star reviews, they deliver gold and silver to your door or store securely in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And right now, when you call and mention that I sent you, you could get up to $20,000 in free silver with your first purchase. Call 855-802-5199 or text POWER to 65532. That's 855-802-5199 or text POWER to 65532. Or click the link in the video description, because when politics turns into performance and the media loses the plot, it's worth protecting something that actually holds up in the chaos and outlasts all the trends. Joining us now is Sky News host James Morrow. James, great to see you again.
Great to be back.
Let's start with what's happening here in Australia. A lot of drama when it comes to politics. Liberal MP Andrew Hastie, he's begun preparing to challenge opposition leader Susan Ley for the Liberal Party leadership, and it seems that the only circumstance in which Hastie would step aside would be as if Angus Taylor can demonstrate more support. What do you make of this? Do you think that a new leader will actually be able to help unite this party?
Look, Susan Ley is a metaphorical dead woman walking in terms of her leadership, but the problem is that, it's terminal, but we don't know how long she's actually going to last. You've got this sitting week happening, the third coming up, which would be the earliest they could do it. But the problem that the coalition, rather the Liberal Party, has right now is they don't have any plan. They don't have any strategy, right? And this is just compounding the mistake that they made at the start of the year, which was to force Parliament to come back early without having a plan with what to do and a plan about what legislation they would offer up once they finally got there. Now they say, okay, well, we've all but taken out the leader, but there's a figurehead, and now we don't know whether it's going to be Andrew Hastie, we don't know if it's going to be Angus Taylor, and so it's a real big mess.
Do you think that, moving forward, if someone like Andrew Hastie does become leader, that would maybe shift support back to the Liberal Party? Because as we've seen, a pretty big rise in support for One Nation.
Well, what they have to have are actual policies. This is the problem. There's no actual substitute for doing the work. And there's a bit of concern around Andrew Hastie that, he attracts a lot of voters who would normally be the ones who we see running off to One Nation and, the ones that the Nats are all concerned about. But at the same time, there's a bit of concern that he's also maybe just a bit more about vibes than actually doing the work. And he had a bit of an own goal, I think, last week when there was a whole debate about the hate speech bills. He voted for them. Okay, you could make a case to say, look, we had to vote for something, and so we got some wins on that. But instead, when he was attacked on this by his supporters, instead of going and saying, look, here's why I did it, you got to understand, he really laid into them on social media, and I just think that was a terrible look.
It's interesting, isn't it? We'll wait and see, of course, what happens. Let's talk about One Nation. We're seeing this massive surge in support for the party, and that, to be honest, doesn't surprise me at all. New research suggests that One Nation may have enough votes to form opposition in federal parliament. You spoke to One Nation leader Pauline Hanson over the weekend on your show Outsiders. Let's just listen.
If we get the number one vote and we get the majority of the votes, the majority of the lower house seats, yes, we can form government. But it's a big ask. And I'm being honest with myself and honest with people. But it is possible. But I think that we'll probably get government in the states before eventually in the federal parliament. But there's nothing stopping us from being opposition first, then working our way towards government.
What do you put Pauline Hanson's success down to at the moment? I mean, is it authenticity, speaking up for the silent majority?
Yeah, it's authenticity. It's also people know what she stands for, right? So nobody knows actually what the Liberal National Coalition stands for at the moment. That's why they split up. The Nats have some pretty clear positions, particularly around green energy and all of that sort of nonsense. And, but within the Libs, they can't even agree on a migration policy at a time when migration is rocketing up the charts of issues people are concerned about, Gab. So this is the crazy thing. They can't even say the words mass migration. They haven't even been able to agree on that terminology. So no wonder they're bleeding support. This is why I say, going back, if you change the leader, you still don't have a platform, and they still need to develop that. Whereas Pauline Hanson, she has been in the game for decades, 20, 30 years. So we know what she stands for. Even if you don't like everything she stands for, you know what she and her party stands for. And I think right now, when everybody sort of sees this as kind of a uniparty choice that's eventually developing here between, the Libs as kind of a Labor light sort of thing and, and not really connected to grassroots people. That's why people agree with her. But on the other hand, if she actually wants to be in opposition, they're going to have a plan for running candidates in seats, including seats in urban areas, and that's going to be tricky.
Yeah, it absolutely will be. And look, I think, as you say, it's authenticity, knowing what she stands for. I mean, I think that's why you have to put, where you have to credit Donald Trump for his success as well. Like him or not, you know exactly where he stands. And it's interesting, while I was over in the US, a lot of people were speaking to me about Pauline Hanson. I mean, her name was what was really cutting through. Let's talk about the United States. Sure. A lot going on over there. I want to get your thoughts on the Democrats in particular. Gavin Newsom, favourite, not so much. But look, he's just announced one day after the US officially withdrew from the World Health Organization that his state would become the first to join the World Health Organization in, of course, a rebuke of the Trump administration's withdrawal. What do you make of Gavin Newsom, his moves recently, clearly trying to be the Dems' nominee?
There's no secret about this. I mean, this is the biggest open secret, and I think he will. And I think he will be the next nominee. This whole thing with the WHO, entirely predictable, although you kind of wonder, what does he know? What is he privy to about some sort of future pandemic? But anyway, we'll put that aside there. Trump was right to pull out of the WHO. The WHO behaved atrociously during the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely.
And so, he was right to do that. But what's really interesting about Newsom is he's trying to get this sort of alternate president thing happening right now. So he was at Davos. He was at the World Economic Forum. And, he was mixing it up and giving all sorts of weird quotes. I spoke a lot about it on the U.S. report, which is now at its new time of 8:30 on Friday nights, by the way.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic. And he also wound up mixing it up with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, wound up posting a fairly kind of iffy, slightly homophobic meme about him, which was pretty interesting. I don't know how that goes down in California, but okay. But yeah, he's running as kind of this alternate government. The really interesting thing right now being that America is at this really tricky space right now where the left and the right and the Democrat states and the Republican states are actually starting to genuinely come apart in some disturbing ways, which we're seeing like in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, Gavin Newsom, watch this space. I don't think his social media strategy is very good. I don't know who's advising him, but he's obviously just trying to run his own race, trying to mimic Trump. Well, yeah, and it's funny to think about where are his alternatives, right? There are, is it going to be Kamala Harris? No, she was the weakest, biggest disaster candidate ever. She's polling okay simply because she's got name recognition. Is it going to be Pritzker from Illinois? I don't think so. Who else could it be? There are very few names out there that are creditable. You've got Pete Buttigieg, which some people really like him, but he polls at literally 0% among the black male population, so that's not going to happen. AOC, who wants to abolish ICE.
She's too young.
Yep.
Too young. She could be, though, a vice president. You could see a California, New York ticket there. So, yeah.
Well, that's concerning. That worries me. Let's talk about Iran. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been forced into hiding, fearing that he will be taken out by a US strike as American aircraft carriers continue towards the Middle East. James, we've been looking at Iran, obviously, all month. There are reports that up to 30,000 people were killed in the space of just a couple of days. It's horrific what is happening there. Do you expect it's just a matter of time now until the US strikes Iran?
Look, I don't know whether or not they strike Iran militarily, but I can tell you if I'm the Ayatollah, if I'm one of the supreme leaders of Iran, well, I'll say this. Last night, after having a few refreshing beers for Australia Day, I had a spicy pepperoni pizza, and I slept better than any of these guys will be sleeping at the moment. They will have just looked at what happened to Maduro in Venezuela. They will remember all of the targeted assassinations that Israel pulled off over the last 2 years in conjunction with its war against Gaza and Hamas. They know that they're all marked men and that it's only a matter of time, and they need to figure out a plan, activate their plan to get on a plane to Russia, where they'll probably get some sort of asylum with as much gold as they can stick in their carry-ons and get out of the country, because otherwise they're literally dead men walking. The big question is, Iran, what comes next? Well, first of all, there's a lot of moves afoot right now to crush the shadow banking system that is allowing the regime to keep surviving. That's going to involve using the UAE and things like that. Secondly, of course, you do have all these military assets. I think that's a last-ditch thing, though, because what has to happen is some sort of stability in creating some sort of new government. I hope that what that looks like is the Shah, the son of the Shah, coming back in, setting up a transitional government and letting that country have some peace and prosperity, which it had before, and it richly deserves again.
James Morrow, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Joining us now is skynews.com.au columnist Louise Roberts. Louise, it's wonderful to see you again.
Great to see you, Gabriella.
Wasn't it fantastic yesterday to see so many Australians out celebrating proudly Australia Day? I mean, barbecues were back, people were out on the beach waving at the Australian flag. Let's just take a look at some of the celebrations. Yeah, we love to see it. And I think it's really interesting that younger Aussies are happy to keep the date. A recent Resolve Political Monitor poll conducted for the Sydney Morning Herald found that 68% of people support the date, January 26. This initially surprised me reading this. I think when I speak to a lot of millennials, some people I speak to still feel very conflicted about the date. But look, what I saw yesterday, definitely a lot of younger Australians taking part in Australia Day celebrations. So it seems like there has been this shift. What do you put it down to?
I think patriotism has become cool again. I think what we saw this year is a lot of Australian flags out in public, people putting them on their cars, people wearing them, you know, all those celebrations you mentioned yesterday, a real pride. And it's fantastic to see, because I think the people who were pushing to change the date really felt that Gen Z, so that 18 to 34 age group, were going to be the engine room of this. They were going to propel it forward, not the younger, much younger or even older generations who perhaps will be more traditional. But I think young people are really on board with having a weekend and celebrating our fantastic country, because they see it elsewhere. They see it in the US and they see it in the UK, and so why not have it here? So if that means a revival in patriotism, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, I speak about how much I love America, how much I like other parts of the world, and I love Australia so much, and I'm so proud to be an Australian. We are so lucky to live here. A lot happening in politics down under. There's an expected leadership spill within the Liberal Party. Also that we're seeing this rise in support for One Nation. This week, Pauline Hanson, the leader of One Nation, posted on X, to celebrate the launch of a super progressive movie and Australia Day, we've put this fantastic film clip out today. When we phoned Holly Valance to write us a song for the movie, she instantly said yes. Let's just hear part of it.
I'm a real diabolical lefty, a real diabolical lefty. Ideology, feeding hate in me, I'll intimidate, I'll indoctrinate. I'm a real diabolical lefty, a real diabolical lefty. Check your bias at the door, liberty. We identify as MZV.
So this song has gone to #2 on the Apple Music charts. Louise, feel free to comment on that film clip or not, but also the rise in support for One Nation. I'd like to hear your thoughts around what you put that down to and why we're seeing that.
I think Pauline Hanson is seeing something, or perhaps acknowledging something that the major parties aren't. That people are absolutely fed up with being told how to think and what to say and what causes to support. And you see these very minority groups who make a lot of noise and people think that's what the rest of Australia want, but it isn't. So, I mean, that's quite a crude and at times funny sort of film clip, but it's meant to be it's not meant to be targeting the inner city elites who will be, oh my God, Pauline's a disgrace. It's going after the Conservative voters who perhaps feel that the Liberals and now the demolished coalition, what do they offer them? They offer them chaos. They don't offer them a proper Conservative point of view. So they're drifting there. And I think the numbers, the threshold they've reached 22% in the primary vote is absolutely fascinating. The first time I believe a minor party has done this in Australia. So that gives them real power at the next federal election. And I know we've got a state election in New South Wales next year, and whether they run a candidate will be interesting to see, I think, because I don't think they've got one at the moment. But it's really showing that people feel that the major parties don't offer them anything, so they're willing to go and at least try and understand where Pauline is on certain issues.
Yeah, well, watch this space. Let's get to all the royal and entertainment news. Where do we start? There's so much happening. Maybe with Andrew, of course, disgraced former Prince Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson. They're said to be on a knife edge as they prepare to vacate Royal Lodge. What's the latest here?
So, yes, they're due out by Friday, although it's already the end of January. Yes, so Friday he has to go. He's moving to Marsh Farm, which is a new place in Sandringham. I note that it's not anywhere near London or nowhere near Windsor, which of course is Williams based, and obviously he's far away from Balmoral, which is where his brother likes to go as well, where Princess Anne likes to be as well. So I think it's the last vestige of his royal life, isn't it, turfing him out of Royal Lodge. Him and Fergie are supposed to be absolutely devastated. I don't think there's going to be a lot, if any, sympathy for them because they've kind of made their own bed, particularly in his case, his association with Epstein, etc. So it'll be interesting to see what his life holds. I still think he may end up in the UAE. I think in that environment, or maybe Spain, there's less concern about sort of royal scandal, and he'd still have some pretty cashed up chums there, I think, who may look after him. But also his daughters, of course, they're very guarded about being seen with him in public and even talking to him. So in a way, that's kind of the real crisis, the fact that, the two girls he thought he could probably lean on are now grown women with their own children and like, well, Dad, we're keeping at arm's length. So it's a real mess for both of them, I think.
Absolutely. Now, over the weekend, King Charles stepped out with his wife, Queen Camilla, to attend church on his Royal Sandringham estate, and he was also seen with Princess Anne.
He was. So the first time since Christmas, they were out together in public, and to me, this is really the soft power in action for the monarchy, isn't it? So the two most reliable members of the royal family, the King and his sister, the Princess Royal, out in Sandringham. They always go to Mass at the church when they're in residence. And the fact they've met the incoming new bishop as well, I thought was very interesting. It's really pushing a message of no matter what's happening on the world stage with the errant brother, they are the face of the monarchy, reliable, predictable and hardworking. So, that would have been a very strategic move, I think, having the two of them in public. And of course, Camilla chatting with Anne too as well to really sort of seal the reputation there.
And Princess Catherine, of course, after 2 years now of recovery following her shock cancer diagnosis, Princess Catherine is reportedly focusing on two major goals as she looks ahead to 2026 and beyond. What can we expect this year?
So, understandably, she's been battling cancer for 2 years and she's now in remission. She's back to full-time royal duties, which has been great to see. But I think her two goals of staying healthy and being ready, it really shows that the weight of the monarchy in the future is as much on her shoulders, I think, as it is on William's shoulders. And I think by the time he ascends to the throne, we'll be totally used to Catherine in public doing the royal functions and being there as an ambassador for the monarchy, because she's more or less doing the job anyway, sort of in waiting with him. She's out there and, advocating for her causes, childcare, early childhood development, etc. The whole branding around the family is seamless, absolutely seamless. They've really struck the balance between public views of the children and giving some privacy, particularly George, to grow up in a normal sort of space. So I think, she's played an absolute blinder on this. I think that the way she operates in public and the way the public sort of love her and adore her is, I mean, it's something that Meghan could really only dream of if she was still in that mindset.
Well, let's talk about Meghan Markle, because there are, of course, reports that Meghan's Netflix series may have been given the axe. Plenty of royal experts say that they're not surprised at all by that. What do you make of this? What are your predictions for Meghan?
Oh, look, I'm not surprised. I think Series 3 was really sort of, you know, drawing a long bow in a way. And I do feel in a way too that she hasn't really made the proper pivot. People still see her as a person whinging to Oprah with her husband. They still see her as a grievance person, and the memoir from the fallout from, you know, Harry's memoir, I think is still reverberating through the family. So I also think just because you marry a prince doesn't mean you can become a lifestyle guru. She really thought in a way she could just sort of, you know, rock up and become the new Martha Stewart. And the problem is she's inauthentic, and people have to like you to want to go into your TV kitchen or your mate's kitchen or whatever it is. So she's just, she's dropped the ball there. And I think for the rest of the year there'll be a lot of spotlight on what her plans are, and will she come up with a strategy? Probably not. I think the game changer will be if she does go to the UK mid-year with Harry, because he's going out there for some pre-events for Invictus next year. So, look, if she does go, it could be an opportunity for her to, you know, ingratiate herself with the public. But
good luck.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's no way back for her with the public. I
don't think so. I don't think they'd be happy to see her there. But we'll watch this space very closely. But of course, we have to get to this huge news and entertainment around the Beckhams and the fallout around that family. Victoria and David Beckham have now shared this message about memories with Brooklyn. This is kind of the first time Victoria has made public comments since her son's explosive rant on Instagram. Can you talk to us about the message from Victoria, and also I want to get your thoughts on the potential brand damage that this has done to the Beckham's brand?
Yeah, look, they're all both posting sort of nostalgic comments. You can see from that photograph there, you can see David's Brooklyn tattoo very clearly there on his back. And, you know, there's some lovely footage which was taken by the photographer at the time of Brooklyn running on set and spontaneously hugging his dad, which of course is what children do. And then Victoria's part of the hug as well. So, look, it's an opportunity, I think, for them to retreat in a way. I know that from dealing with the Beckhams and seeing what they do, that when there's a crisis, they go straight into brand management on steroids, really. And that's clearly what this is as well. They can't control what Brooklyn says about them, but they can control what they pump out on social media. And I thought that was interesting too, that Victoria was at Emma Bunton's 50th on the weekend, and she posed up with the Spice Girls. And the Spice Girls is Victoria's, you know, safety blanket. That was her peak of her career 30 years ago. No one can really, you know, criticise her for that, when there was always some sort of discussion about how good a singer she was. But as far as being a brand for Spice Girls, she was 100% on board with that. So to have the girls around her, or the women rather, around her and saying how much she loved it, and David chipping in and saying, oh, it was wonderful too, I think will do a lot to boost her confidence and hopefully turn the narrative more towards them. As will it destroy brand Beckham, what Brooklyn's done? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of experience in papering over dramas. You know, we've got the issue with David and the alleged affair many, many years ago. They managed to survive that. So I think eventually Brooklyn will come to his senses and realise that he only has one mum and dad and one family. And although he's proving a point, there is a better way to do it. There's plenty of rich kids who leave the family situation and don't blow up the whole relationship. And I think if he's looking to Harry as a great example, he should be looking well away from that.
Look anywhere else. Do not look at Harry. I think we could all learn a lesson from that.
Absolutely.
Don't do a Brooklyn Beckham or a Prince Harry, please. But that, of course, may take some time. Louise Roberts, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you. Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.